Hey everyone, good afternoon. Thanks for joining in. And today we have a very special guest. We have Roshan Thiran, who is the CEO, and he likes to call himself the coolie of Leaderonomics. And we're going to be speaking a little bit about the future of learning development, specifically in Malaysia. And then after that, we can kind of go where the discussion kind of morphs to. So I want to welcome Roshan to the show. This is Connections by TalentStore.
Sure.
Hey,
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 great to be
Roshan.
here. But
All
yeah,
right.
my title changed a couple of years ago officially,
To what?
because the world of being a CEO is a different world today in the 21st century lah. So we need to
So,
rebrand ourselves as coolies lah, as servants that serve the people that are running the show lah, essentially. So I think Arun, it's high time we got your title change also lah.
definitely, servant leadership, right, is best. So today's show, we're going to be talking about learning development,
Mm,
and what's the future look like. Like today, we have a good sense of what it is, especially in Malaysia. But I really wanted to tap onto you in terms of what you thought the future looks like. I think you see a lot of different things across the world through a lot of the partnerships that you have with the Leaderonomics Group. So let's kick it off with just that question now. What
mm.
or how do you see learning development evolving for the future?
Okay. I'm surprised you say you can see a lot of things in Malaysia because I can't see anything. Part of the reason why it's hard to really pinpoint, I think it has to change.
Okay.
um, L&D in the corporate sense, but also learning in general for education, from even K to 12 and university education. So a lot of things, if you look at the world today, it's a transitionary world. And what that means is that there is no set standards, just like 1920s to 1940s, right? We had a world where a lot of innovation, cars and so on, but no traffic
Yep.
lights, no proper systems, right? Until
Mm.
United Nations came in and put in WHO for medicine and UNICEF for children and the Geneva Convention on how to fight, and agree on the way of proper war, right? We could just do anything and everything is permissible, somewhat. So we are in
Yep.
that sort of flux today. We don't really know what currencies are going to win, whether we should work on Bitcoin or Ethereum or Litecoin or Ringgit Malaysia or US dollar or renminbi or whatever lah, right? So there's no real standard anything anymore, right?
Yeah.
The models of the past, like the US dollar, is the gold standard of currency. This is the gold standard of that, and so on and so forth. Google is the gold standard of search,
Yep.
and with ChatGPT, and all these, like, we don't understand what is what anymore, right?
Mm.
So that there's no standards, like, and because of that, right, we don't really have a clear sense of the future of work, right? What are the jobs of the future? Now, L&D is essentially to build up the skills, capability. I call it MBS, right? The mindsets, the behaviors, and the skills that are needed to administer and execute the jobs of the future, lah, right? Or
Yep.
in this
Yep.
sense, L&D today is the jobs of today, lah, right? So if you look at L&D, it's very focused on a couple of areas, lah. One is personal mastery. How you want to master your personal capability of communication and negotiation, all these stuff, influence, and so on and so forth. Then you have the business mastery, like how understanding the
Okay.
industry and so on. And then you have the functional pieces, right? I need to be an expert in my domain, whether it's
Yep.
a HR space or supply chain or whatever it is, right?
Mm.
And lastly, we loosely talk about it as leadership mastery, like the ability to manage people, the ability to scale an
Okay.
organization and drive business and so on and so forth. So there are a couple of L&D spaces, but that itself is evolving, right?
Yep.
It's evolving in a very drastic way, so let's look at when I look at L&D, I look at a number of things, I think the curriculum has to evolve, right? So one of the clear pieces where there has to be a change is in the L&D curriculum now. And so, if you think about the L&D curriculum, right?
Yep.
Uh, I mean, what is it that you need to teach these guys? What are things that they are grappling with? And the second part will be a little bit more on the delivery, right? How do we deliver this curriculum? Are we
Okay.
delivering it in a way that makes sense, that is engaging, that enables people to understand and it's very interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I was reading.
Mm.
I was preparing. I was writing a white paper. Actually, I hate doing this, right? But I had to write a white paper for a economic conference that I'm going in the US in a
Okay.
couple of months. And they said, "Look, you got to write." It's like a Davos thing, right? So you got to write a white paper. I'm like, what paper? What? So anyway, I wrote it about disrupting education and how education is somewhat going to be disrupted. And as I was starting to think about it, those are the things started to come to me. Like the first part is that it's not just education, right? I mean, L&D works, right?
Yeah.
We have to really look at delivery mechanisms. There's virtual augmented reality, there's chatbots, virtual assistants, there's cloud-based learning platforms, there's machine learning and predictive analysis, there's mobile learning, there's blockchain technology. I mean, all that, right? Then
Yeah.
then the next part, right, is the teaching methods, right? Personalized learning, collaborative learning, project-based learning. So you got the curriculum, you got the delivery methods, you got the teaching methods, right? Or the teaching capability. Then you
Sure.
also have the business model, right, for L&D. And I think
Yeah.
that itself is evolving. Because you see a lot of
Correct.
L&D
Yeah.
models
Definitely.
in the
Yeah.
US is very skewed towards individual B2C type L&D models. And that's
Right.
because in the US, there's a hire and fire model, right? So I can hire you for your skills. You don't have the skills, I fire you.
Yeah.
In Malaysia and many of our countries, we hire people and then we're stuck with them. We can't really fire them. So we hire them supposedly for their skills and capability, but then we realize they don't have the skills. They did a fantastic interview, but not necessarily translate into execution and skills.
Yeah.
And so we see we have to upskill them. So the onus on upskilling is on the company in many Asian countries, right? So when you talk about the L&D sphere, right, I think all these things will change. I think the curriculums are changing in a drastic, becoming less functional, less HR, IT, because I think those functions will disappear. I think
Sure.
it's becoming a lot more integrated, more business, a lot more. How do you drive change? How do you drive innovation? How you drive? I think that thematically it's changing, but I think the teaching methods also are going to change. A lot more. The learner is learning in a very different way, and then I
Right.
think the curriculum in terms of the delivery methodology, it's no more going to be just classroom. It's going to be things that I talked about, virtual and augmented reality chatbots, virtual assist. I mean, I just with agent GPT and playing around with chat GPT, you can create your own virtual assistants to teach you
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
And chatbots, right? Cloud-based learning platforms and like Nicole and stuff, right? Machine learning, predictive analytics. It's going to make a lot of things change, right? And how we teach, how we deliver content, and not just content, right? Even hand holding, right? So I really think fundamentally there's a huge change that's
Happening.
but I think the bigger issue is that companies also have to change, and so
Right.
L&D is like put in the back burner, right? Because I haven't done my own digital transformation. I'm a company. And HR hasn't even embarked on their digital transformation in automating and in RPA and a lot. To me, the whole HR function is RPA, lah, right? Robotic process automation, right?
Right.
So it's a broad question. What are some of the things? But I tell you, it will happen. And here's the good news. I think in Malaysia, we can be one of the pioneers in the space. Many years ago, there was every time you look at people who invent stuff like Gutenberg with the printing press, the first book he published it becomes the bestseller, right? To some extent, right? So
Yep.
if we are able to understand technology, understand education, understand learning, and craft, understanding that the business model for L&D has to change, the curriculum for L&D has to change, the teaching methods has to change, and the delivery mechanisms has to change. If you understand these four areas, and we drive and build something that works according to this new area and space, I think we can be the people that
Correct.
deliver cutting edge L&D to the world, and I think we
And
can become a hub for L&D in the world, and that's really what my
sure.
vision is, like, somewhat.
Yeah. But then from the perspective, so the interesting part is like from the perspective of the customer, right? Like if I'm a HR person, if I'm an L&D person,
Sure.
how has that change that you have kind of mentioned factored into their decision making process? Are they still thinking along the lines of L&D that we are so used to, or are they already realizing this change is coming and adapting? How do you see it, interacting with a
I
lot of
think they
these
all
folks?
realize the change is coming up, but I think just like in the past, right? It's an awareness. Let's do awareness and awareness and awareness, lah. So it's still at the
Okay.
awareness stage of how do we. Let's build awareness on digital savviness in organization. Let's build. So you see a lot of programs of digital savviness or embracing digital or change mindsets and this and that,
Yep.
right? So this is fundamentally the beginning stage. So when you move from horse to car, when you move
Yep.
from Pony Express to all the telephones and all the different communication tools that were created, and radio and TV and all these different entertainment pieces that replaced what was then. Today we're doing the same thing. We're changing TV and this and that, and all to new means and communication and
Sure.
technology
Yeah.
and entertainment and so on and so forth, right? So I think the awareness that, okay, in fact they embrace it, and ChatGPT is surprisingly, not I thought there'd be a billion people on it, right? But it's in the millions.
Yeah.
But it is right. I mean, I was coding my team today. We were scripting. They were scripting stuff, like, right. I mean, they were doing scripts for videos
Okay.
and commercials and stuff. I was like, dude, you got to get my best friend to do the scripting for you, and we co-script. My good friend ChatGPT will co-script with me, right? And I said,
Yep.
treat it like a friend. Say hello, friend, because I showed them my screen and how I talk to my buddy ChatGPT, and it's like, hey, when you say hi there, how are you doing, and blah blah blah, I say, yeah lah, they're a friend, right? You talk to them nicely, they give you nice answers, right? But my point is, it's at the awareness stage.
Right.
But I think when it hits, right, there's going to be a lot of companies that just close shop, right? Just like the past, the vendors
Yeah.
of the if you're in the transportation business, and you insist that horse is the way, right? You can, but there'll be one or two of you who will go into very exclusive horse for the rich, like racing and horse
Sure.
racing.
Yep.
So there will be some gains for one or two of those, but the
That'll be.
masses
Yeah.
will have to transition to cars or whatever new work or new technology or new sort of industries that morph in the future. Now, at that point in time, there will be a struggle between government, who says, hey, you in your school should have upskilled these guys for the jobs of
Mm.
the future, versus
Yep.
industry. And
Yep.
and this is where industry, I think, is taking the lead. So if you look at some of the forward thinking, like Penang State, I think is one of those forward thinkings, right? And I was there, when I was with Invest Penang and MDAC, and when we visit so they're saying, look, industry is saying that we need these skills, but education and the government essentially is not providing those skills. We bridge the gap by creating little shops to produce those skills, or little to train people externally, so that they can then place them into organization. So there's going to be an in between, and I really don't know where the model is going to lie. But I think on the customer's perspective is that today it seems like an unnecessary spend on L&D,
Yep.
right? Because I'm
Yep.
spending on communication skills and project management and this and that, when there's technology that can do this better than humans, right? So I'm trying to upskill humans to do something that may be useful for 3 years,
Exists,
5 years,
lah.
10
Yeah.
years, temporary. So I'm training. So I think about this. I'm spending money to train people to be good car drivers so they can become Grab drivers, knowing that in 10 years' time it'll be autonomous vehicles and all these Grab drivers will be jobless, right? But never mind. I train them because 10 years we still got Grab going strong.
Runway, lah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we're bringing a pipeline of Grab driving talent, right? But think about it, right? You rather bring a pipeline of embedded software engineers, or prompt engineers to replace digital marketing, or so on and so forth. I mean, there's so many different
Sure.
sort of,
Yeah.
we can guesstimate some of the new sort of skills, lah. So I think the customer is a bit confused at this point in time. I think there is 3 or 4 different schools of thought. One is maintain, defend as long as you can, which is not
Okay.
unfair to say. So if you're like the newspapers or the pasta and so on, you defended it for a very long time. Because to me, I thought 2008, 2009, 2010, it would die. But they
Yep.
defended up to 2017, 18 almost, right?
Yeah.
Today it's gone lah, right? But you can keep defending it, and then you continue to use L&D as a temporary patch to enable you to function and have the skills necessary for your people at this point in time. But at some point in time, you have to use L&D to upskill them if you want to keep them. If not, you will then have to externally hire these guys, lah. So I think L&D is an important bridge, because it can be the bridge to transition your employees to future skills if you start doing it now, lah. And this is where the really brilliant future forward-thinking L&D leaders, forward-thinking HR leaders, forward-thinking CEOs, they're doing, lah. They're saying, look, nobody has these skills. How do we enable us as a company to think about what area we'll be playing or morphing into, and what kind of skills are needed in those areas? How do we translate that to learning interventions? And how do we build programs to be able to enable our employees to slowly transition to this new
Sure.
space, rather than when it happens, boom, hey, I need these skills and I need it now, boom, go hire external, right? And then I have
Yep.
to fire pretty much my whole organization. So I think this is the conundrum, right? That that
Yep.
that that is out there,
Organization
right?
space.
And how
Yeah.
do you and there's no right answer, right? Because if you are a guy making money currently, why would you bother um, wanting to build this transition? because at
Yeah.
some point in time it happens and it happens, right? And that's what happens to all these guys, borders and all these different industries that just boom, banking is one, I think that will
Yep.
just go very fast. I mean, today is compliance hub by Bank Negara, but at some point in time, it's the fintech guys. I mean, it will Education is another one Ministry of it's government sort of sanction, right?
Yep.
Uh, and government sort of accredited, right? But at some point in time, all these little, I mean, I was speaking to the CEO of a university and said, "Oh, these little mosquitoes, they're irritating us." Then I said, "These mosquitoes are gonna eat you up." It's like Alexander Graham, sorry, Alexander the Great, the mosquito that
Yeah.
killed him, right? So
Kill him. Yep.
one of these mosquitoes that eat you up. They're like, they're irritating, but it's true, right? I mean, these are little mosquitoes that are startups and testing each industry, and they're rebuilding the industry in a very different way. Just like Airbnb rebuilt the
Tour.
space, right? The
Yeah.
hospitality space, and Uber rebuilt the transportation space. You see that happening in education, in banking, in all these other industries. And I
Sure.
really don't know what the future state or who the winners would be. But
Mm.
but it's very important questions to ask. I mean, I think these are important questions to ponder.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Roshan. So we're gonna take a short break, but before we do, I just want to have a shout out to those who are joined the session: Charlene, Vimala, Bob, Seelan. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for your comments. So we're gonna cut over to a short break, and this is our way of creating a dent in the L&D space, that little mosquito that kind of Roshan spoke about. So we're going to come back after the minute break and we're going to resume our conversation. All right. So thanks for joining in for today's session. We're going to kick it off and wrap it up in a few minutes, but we got a couple of more questions to ask. So the one area that I wanted to speak about is, you kind of mentioned that Malaysia could potentially be a hub, right, for that change in L&D. Why do you think Malaysia can be that hub? Given that we have Singapore that is, pushing fast. Indonesia is as well pushing very, very fast on their side. Why do you think Malaysia kind of can be that center?
Not to say Malaysia can. It can. I mean, anyone can, right? I mean, the question is
Sure.
about niche, right? So, I mean, if you think about, I just give that university space, right? So,
Yeah.
what's happened is that universities have an IT program and they have 10 different IT programs or business program and accounting and this and that. But what we see is that there's a niche to say, okay, in we want to offer a nitrous degree in embedded software or in software in a very small niche, right? And they do it for 100 kids or 150 kids, and another one
Yep.
here, another one here, and these mosquitoes, right? So to say, right? A combination of them, right? Ultimately will create an industry, right? Or become a powerful proposition. And if you think about India, why is India such a technology hub? Why is the Google's, you got Microsoft CEO, Google CEO, so many global tech company CEOs are from India, right?
From India. Yeah.
It's not because India had IITs, which is the University for Technology, right?
Yep.
The India Institute of Technology. It was because about 30 years ago, parents used to send kids to these little coding tuition centers and this and that and little academies here and there. Not many people can. It's like 100, 200, I don't know, maybe 300 people, 500 people can go into to a certain IIT. And of course now there's so many IITs. But back then there's a couple of IITs, but not that many kids can get into an IIT. But why is there so much tech talent available there? It's because these little academies were set up, and and to some extent, India took you sort of decided that since nobody wants to play the technology game or the coding game or the programming game, we'll play that, right? Now, I see Singapore looking at the financial services game and say, I want to be a big player there. I see people playing in the biotech space, in software, in this and that and so on, and GBS and other areas. I think we don't have that much people. We have 15 million probably population of working people at any given point in time. Maybe we can bring in another couple million. But with 16 to 20 million people, essentially to find a niche and you got to be very big in that niche. And I think education, we've already got so many universities here. Education can be a very powerful space. I think L&D is an extension of that, right?
Yep.
It's adult education and corporate education. And to say that, look, invest in building Malaysia maybe as the HR slash the human capital development capital of the world, right?
Right.
And you can get many industries set up, but essentially you can upskill the world through one center, because you can upskill the world
Sure.
virtually, right? Whether it's
Yep.
content development, whether it's some of the delivery mechanisms that I talked about, and investing in using whether it's virtual and augmented reality or chatbots and systems or cloud-based or machine learning or any of these things, right? Mobile learning and blockchain technology in education, right? To track progress and to build credentialing and to build what we call skills passport. I mean, there's a lot of areas. But if you niche as a country and say, let's where our focus is going to be,
Yeah.
and we
Okay.
tend to focus on everything, healthcare, this, that, and so in the end, we don't get an expertise in one area, right?
Right.
But Estonia just focus on e-government, right? And really, it's all about government being and they become the gold standard. So I think it's time to think and say, look, we are not that many population, but we are high quality population in terms of we have the managerial capability.
Sure.
We have the language capability, the know-how, and there is a potential to think through and say let's build that as a possible it's a possible avenue. So I know there's a lot of comments flying in and so on, but I say this not as a person who's knowledgeable. I mean, I think I've been looking at the dots, as I think what somebody mentioned about connecting the dots, and to me
Yeah.
it's like every time I see a dot, sometimes dot don't make sense, but after a couple of years, you see 3 or 4 dots start to connect and start to make sense, and I really think L&D, the dots are slowly starting to connect, but I don't think everybody sees it.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen the full picture, right? So we maybe we've connected about 2/3 of the dot, but you still got a third to figure out. And remember, the world is not set in place. We don't know what the gold standard. So somebody comes and says this is the new gold standard, then everything changes, right? So he
Yep.
said VHS is the gold standard. I'm Betamax, boom, I'm gone. Right? I'm no more the standard. Everything
Yep.
changes again, right? So we still having that. We have that issue to resolve too, the standard issue, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's why. I mean, personally, I think it's about and this is where
Finding a niche, lah. Finding a niche and
and
going in.
going deep,
Yeah,
deep,
deep
deep
into
into
it.
that niche, into many spaces in that niche, right? Because there's
Yep.
so many spaces in L&D itself, right?
Right.
And there's so much technology that's needed across the board in that space. Education. I mean, it's a broader education issue, like.
Okay. And I think the last question, and then we can wrap it up, is really, like there's been a lot of shift, lah, especially post pandemic, from like your permanent employee to kind of that gig slash hybrid employment where a lot of people are freelancing. How do you think that will also impact L&D? Like,
Yeah.
do you see a shift that is happening from the employee standpoint that is actually impacting the way companies think about L&D?
Yeah. I mean, it's my earlier point, right? You say the US model is an individual model, right? Where I'm a bit, if you
Yeah.
want to learn, you go learn yourself, lah. You pay yourself, lah. You go on Coursera, you go Udemy, you go to Nicole,
Sure.
you go to Nicole, you go and learn yourself, lah, right?
Yeah.
But a Malaysia model is, I'm waiting for my boss. My company are lousy or never give me training, this and that, and we complain, right? And but you see, the gig thing is actually, gig is done by employees, right? Because employee A and employee
Yep.
B both earn the same salary. One does 10 times more than employee B. This guy
Sure.
says not fair, not fair. He goes out or she goes out and does we can say I just freelance. So
Yep.
now company that they work for says I still want this employee A because even though he's gone freelance, I'll buy it. I'll buy some of their output because I need the
Yep.
output, right?
Sure.
And so more and more freelancers come in. One is structurally the company will change. You cannot have a hierarchy company because if your hierarchy means there's boss and this and that. If a gig employee, you say, shut up and just do what I say. The guy say, okay, bye-bye. I go and do some other company, right? You cannot control gig employees the same way. So you need a network arrangement where it's a group of people collaborating together, including your employees like that. So that's one change. But I think the bigger change is because more and more people will start becoming gig-based or output-based employees. I think almost all employees will move away from time-based. Today, Arun, most of your employees are time-based employees. So you're paying your
Definitely.
employees based on the time. So whether they sit there and eat roti canai for half a day and do what, you're paying them for time. Instead, you pay them for output and you say, look, I pay you X amount if you give me this output. Right?
Yep.
Now, more and more companies are thinking that way. how can I become output-based company? Now, when I become an output-based company, what happens to L&D? If you have an employee who's not producing an output, you just find another person and then pay them, right? So you
Yep.
actually will pay them more because your L&D budget is actually embedded in the price that you're paying to these gig guys and so on. Because
Mm.
there's no benefits, there's no L&D, there's no cost. Today we are paying low wages in Malaysia because we're tagging on L&D, we're tagging on benefits, we're tagging on a whole bunch of things, right? So you see, we complain of wage structure in Malaysia, blah blah blah. But it's also, if you look at the employer's perspective, they will say, I got to pay HRDF that 1%, I have to pay this, I have to pay that, I have to, hey, your net salary very high one, technically, right? Base, and then I give you training, I give you this, I send you this, I give you this, and then got team
Yep.
building, some more bonus, I must pay you how many months, blah blah blah. I mean, you put a loaded salary, it might be, maybe it's not comparable, obviously, still not comparable. But what I'm saying is, we never look at it as, but once you get a gig person, then you say, hey, I'm paying you more because of your output, because you're on
Right.
gig. But that means your L&D is, the onus on developing yourself is on you, right? So that changes the game drastically, right? Because
Of course.
then you start to see more and more individual based B2C type L&D,
Exactly. The Udemy's, the Coursera's.
whatever lah. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
of the
Correct.
world lah, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I mean, to me, I think Nicole is still far ahead of everybody else lah. But
Yep.
but I mean, but then things like Happily or Budaya, right? Where we had a tracking both internal, external. Your network, right, is tracked, right? I'm tracking
Mm.
my gig worker, my employee. I'm engaging them. I'm putting some rewards both for my gig worker and my employee, and making sure they're collaborating, making sure that they think they're one, and maybe they don't even know that they're gig or employee. And I think
Mm.
that's what's going to happen. Most of the people may not know whether I'm on a gig or an employee or output base or whatever it is, or consultant or contractor and so on and so forth. You're just, oh, you're part of the ecosystem, you're part of the network, right? So I think that's where it's going. I may be wrong, obviously, right? Because things just happen.
Yeah.
But I think if you think that's happening, then how do you prepare
Yep.
for it as employees? Whoa, onus on learning is on you. Wow, that's going to be a whole different change, right? And remember, today I can hire people from anywhere in the world,
Right.
right? We have got Indonesians on our payroll. Essentially, it's so easy, right? And they're different price point. They think and they're very hungry, and 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 so we become a competitive world globally for output, right? Because you can get the output anywhere, right? Not
Right.
necessarily the person
Yep.
sitting in the office in the chair where you are, right?
Correct.
Especially in knowledge-based businesses or industries, right? So that there's going to be fundamental changes that happen. We probably need to think a lot deeper, but having the conversation is important because you start to prepare and think that as the changes happen, you're not going to be surprised by, like, as if a gorilla suddenly came and eat you up, it's a transition.
It's a gradual shift, lah.
It
Yeah.
is gradual, but for most people, they'll say, "Oh, suddenly this thing came up. You don't know
Yeah.
how, I don't know where from where this Google first came up, and Chat GPT. I mean, we're talking about generative AI for how many 8, 9, 10 years already, right? But today they made the model work, and suddenly everybody, or they scaled the
Yeah.
model, I would say.
Yeah. They scaled
It
it.
was working for a while, but it's they scaled the model, and people are, oh, it suddenly just crept up on us. I'm like, huh, not really. I mean, even Nicole was on AI. That's 2018, right?
Sure.
We already
Yeah.
building AI models on Nicole. So it's not something new, right? It's something that's always been there. It's just that it feels like it crept up because people are not looking at the dots. So my advice is always see what are the dots in the LH space, in the HR space, in the people space, in the organization space. And it doesn't make sense today, but keep the dots somewhere. And
Mhm.
at some point in time, all these dots will start to link. And that's where danger is about to lurk, and some big gorilla is about to rear its head somewhere.
All right. Thanks, Roshan. Thanks. It's a fantastic conversation. To wrap it up, we're gonna just give out a couple of announcements. Tomorrow we have a very interesting session. This is especially for the freelance trainers, training providers out there in Malaysia and beyond. We're going to be having a guest speaker, Maverick. Well known in the among the L&D trainers, and I think he's going to speak about how you can become a higher income trainer, right? Really to maximize your value and grow your business. And in June, we are actually running a special program, public program that organizations can fully claim against HRDF, and it's called Inside Risk, right? It's a fantastic program developed in Switzerland, and we are bringing it to the region, and we hope that you can be part of it. So it's going to be on the 7th of June, and I think we're going to leave the session with a short trailer about what Inside Risk is all about.
This is not another TV series or masterclass. This is not about hearing some theories about leadership development or crisis management. This is a groundbreaking approach to experiential learning, where you learn through tough practice. In this journey, you will step into the shoes of TV5 Monde CEO Yves Bigot. On the night of April 15, 2015, the network fell victim to one of the most brutal cyber attacks ever led against a media group. Immersed in the story as Yves, you will see how and why he made his decisions during the attack, and you will be asked to face the same choices yourself. You will experience game-changing ideas from best-selling books and the most advanced research, allowing you to deploy these ideas in the context of your own life and professional environment. And you will benchmark yourself against your peers and against Yves himself. Ready? I'll see you very soon.